Next dream I'm going to cover then. So this one happened exactly the same night as the one that's called What Lies Beneath that I've literally just filmed. But obviously I couldn't pack in these two dreams into one video. The last video was about an hour because it goes quite a lot. There is quite a lot to that dream, so it did take quite a bit of talking through. And that dream finished at 3 a.m. It took me about an hour to write down the dream. So I've woken up and then straight away I'm writing the dream down, so it's fresh. I always do that. Okay, I try to always do that. So sometimes, quite often, my wife is kind of wakes up or whatever and sees me sitting up in the bed and thinks, "What are you doing?" you know, writing messages. Obviously, it looks like I'm texting somebody, but I'm just writing a message on my phone real quick. To get all the information down. So this happens at 4 o'clock in the morning. So this is also the same date, so 27th of the 7th, 2025. I guess technically 28th because it's gone into the morning at 4 a.m. But I'll just leave it as the day before. That's generally how I do it. So this one, as I said, I'm going to call this Ready or Not, Here I Come. Okay. So yeah, so same night, blah, blah, blah. It took about an hour to write the previous dream down. Yeah, so dream starts. Okay, cool. Right, so the dream starts then with me being in a large house again. So again, the previous dream, if you watch the one that's called, I've forgotten the name already, What Lies Beneath, that is set in a large house. So this is set in a large house, okay? So it's almost like a continuation, even though there's been an hour break there. We're going into another one, there's a large house again. But this is different. It's a completely different house, but interesting there. So dream starts with me in a large house again, and it's somebody who's clearly got a lot of money. So somebody's very rich. I would have said rich, um, like millionaire sort of status, kind of rich. Whereas the other person wasn't. It was somebody who's got obviously clearly got a lot of money because it's like a 4 or 5 story house. So a lot of bedrooms. So that previous dream, clearly they had a lot of money, but this is another level kind of rich. This is like massive, massive, massive houses. And where the previous one was based in the UK, I had a feeling that this could be based in the US, possibly. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, the person has a lot of money. These guys were basically they've arranged a dinner. So they've got this big, big dinner that's going on, and let's say there's roughly seven or more people that have been invited to this dinner. Okay, like a big dinner party thing. Kind of formal, look, like all at a dining room table. Big, long dining room table. It's a beautiful home. Okay, and they're all mainly in their late teens, so maybe early 20s. So it's not their house; it's their parents' house. But it had that kind of spoilt rich kid vibe to this location and stuff like that, and that we were kind of beneath them. Okay, that's the kind of feeling you get. We're just kind of an average sort of people that probably go to the same school as them or something like that. And these guys are like super, super rich and they're kind of flaunting their wealth. But because they have money, they think they're better than everybody else, even though they've not earned any of that money. They're just, as I said, they're the they're the they're the kids of rich parents. The parents weren't there, by the way. Anyway, so so I ate some of the food, but as we were eating the food, it felt like we were being watched, and so that put me on guard. I was like, "What's in this food? Have they poisoned us or something?" I had this. Already, I was feeling like there's something a bit off about this. Yeah, as I said, I had a sense that there was some sort of a motive behind this dinner. I didn't feel like we knew them particularly well. We didn't necessarily know them, these guys particularly well, all of us, because we're all kind of like looking at each other, almost like we're all here, all like around as guests, and these two guys are kind of off in front of us, and they basically it's like, I don't know, it's a little bit like where you have these are like the popular guys in school or something, and it's like, oh wow, they want to be friends with me, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit like that, and I kind of felt like the a bit of an outsider, and but I was there, I was invited, and I went, but I didn't feel like that kind of stardom, kind of, oh wow, look at these people. Anyway, yeah, so as I said, I just felt like there was a motive behind the dinner, and there was. So I wasn't completely off at all. So this group had seen something online. So it was, as I said, it's definitely two of them. It may have been more, but they'd seen this thing online, and it was something to do with T-shirts and stuff like that, which had a face on it and a number. Don't really understand what that specifically meant. Lots of different designs, and it was almost like a participation reward. So if you imagine, I know what it reminds me of this. Okay, because I remember there was like this fitness thing, and if you bought the fitness plan, then you got a T-shirt, and it was like a prideful T-shirt that you'd go out and you'd wear, and it'd be like, yes, I'm doing this fitness thing. It was kind of like that. They wanted this reward. It was something that money couldn't buy, basically. This T-shirt that you would get from these people that invented this kind of game, that if you did it, then you would get this T-shirt. So it's like a bragging rights kind of thing. All right. Yeah, kind of souvenir, and they were kind of getting it. It was like almost like a dress code for this game, which I call a little bit like it was like a manhunt kind of thing. So I wasn't aware of this phenomenon. So this was something that was kind of like a social media thing that everybody was. It was kind of almost like not an urban myth kind of thing, but it was like this does exist. This is going on, and it's becoming a bit more mainstream. This kind of thing. Okay, so I wasn't I wasn't aware too much about it. I'd heard of it, but I didn't really know what it was about. But it was basically a fight to the death between people. Really, is what it was. There were these were between friends, acquaintances, maybe even family members, whoever's part of this game. Okay, and this was the first game of its kind, and we were like pretty much like the first wave of participants. Now I know that there's films out there. I've watched these films that are like this. There is actually one called I think it's called The Hunt or Hunt. It's actually quite a funny film. But it's about all these elites that pick people for this hunt, but they actually capture them and then throw them in, and then they're picking them off. And then you've also got The Purge. It was sort of a little bit. It reminded me a little bit of The Purge, because there's a bit. Again, these are all horrible. These aren't great films. These are ones I watched before I was a Christian, and I haven't really wanted to watch since. I have watched The Hunt since, but not The Purge. I don't think I've kind of. It's a bit of a dodgy one, but there's a bit where you've got like all the rich you see in that. They there's a they don't go out and kill people. Instead, they have people come to them, and then they kill them in their own homes. And you get this bit where it's basically people who volunteer themselves, or they get captured and taken to this house, and then they get killed. So I do know this. I'm not aware. I'm aware of other things that are incredibly similar to this. But this was a dream. This is what it was. It wasn't on my mind. It wasn't something I'd seen, but it does play out very similar. Okay. So again, if you see these rich kids as kind of like the elites, I suppose, and we're just like the average people, and they've not captured us. They've invited us to a dinner, but it's under false pretenses. And we're kind of thrown into this game. Okay, so let's get this progressing. So as I said, and again, being like the Purge, in that friends might turn against each other. That actually happens in the Purge. Where a sister ends up killing, or getting killed, or is jealous of her sister, and they end up shooting at each other and stuff like that. So this is a similar sort of thing where all sorts of people that are even really close could end up being in this game and killing each other. It's so weird. Such a weird thing that you would do. It just defies all logic, doesn't it? That you would end up killing your own family members. Anyway, so this was the first game of its kind, as I said. We're the first wave of participants. Anyway, a couple of the guys at this party were acting a little bit shifty. They were talking, quietly between themselves and like looking at us, talking a bit, looking at us. As I said, and we're stood back from these couple of guys. All right, and they're proposing a game, and then they're kind of like, right, yeah, let's do it. So then it's. So before telling us what the game was, they say, right, before they announce it's a game, sorry, they say to us, right, everybody, we're going to play a game, right? But everybody do it, run out, empty your pockets, empty your pockets, empty your pockets. It's kind of like that, and we're like, oh, okay. So we start emptying our pockets, yeah. And these, as I said, these guys are rich kids, and they're kind of smiling. They're all excited. They're really excited about this because they know what's going to happen. We don't. We're in the dark big time, and so we all comply. You know, we're guests at this house, and we're like, okay, okay. But I think yeah, what happened was while this was going on, I kind of snuck off. So I disappeared upstairs. I found a room to temporarily hide, so just to hide in. As I said, I seemed to be getting a vibe of something that was going on, whereas everybody else seemed to be maybe a bit not necessarily naive. It's just that, let's just say I was very on guard because something didn't feel right, and they didn't seem to feel that, but I did. Okay, or they just were compliant and they thought, no, it's just my imagination, you know, that kind of thing. But I wasn't. I was more like, there's something going on here. If something's going to go on, I'm going to want to make sure I'm prepared in some way. So I go upstairs thinking something's going to happen in a minute. I don't really want to be around for this. So I go upstairs. This is a place that's got loads of rooms. You know, as I said, this is a massive house. Think of it a little bit like a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air kind of like huge house, almost looks like the White House. That's the kind of image I have of this kind of house. Massive house, of these rich kids that are living there. And I know, yeah. And so I go upstairs and I go into this room, random bedroom. Okay, just a bedroom, not actually even very big bedroom. It's quite a small bedroom, and I go in there and I temporarily just decide that I'm going to hide out there for a bit, because if I hear something kicking off downstairs, or it's all quiet and nothing's happening, well then maybe I'll come down. Maybe I'm just imagining it. I can always explain away the fact that I've been away just for a small moment. That oh yeah, I need to go to the bathroom, need to go to the toilet, you know, that kind of thing. But what I'm actually doing is I'm using this moment to start actually hiding some weapons. So I know I've got somewhere to go to, which again, I'm in a bedroom. All right, I've not gone anywhere to get weapons. I'm in a bedroom. Okay, so I'm in a bedroom, and I've noticed that there's some potential weapons. Now they're specifically tent pegs. Okay, so if you imagine a tent peg is just literally being a piece of metal that's like that, just like that, the most basic tent pegs. That's it. And I've got like a bundle of a few tent pegs, like 2, 3 tent pegs, something like that. Why they would be in a bedroom, I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all. Again, given the size of this place, they'd have some sort of a garage or somewhere or a basement or something they could store all camping gear and things like that. Weird. And even at the time, I thought it was a little bit strange. But there's some other bits as well, which I hide, and it's so I'm stowing them somewhere. I think what I actually did, I seem to remember, was I was on a bed, and I'd put them behind like some pillows, or I'd fed them down the back of a headboard or something like that, is where I'd kind of hid them. And then the door's right there. And as I'm hiding them, yeah, so sorry, no, I'll explain this first. So I hide them there, and I went back downstairs after basically being found out. So there was people that were these guys were like, oh, you know, blah blah blah's missing. I wonder where they've gone. So they search and they find me. They basically find me, and they knock on the door, and or the door's not locked, and they open the door, and I'm in there, and I end up going downstairs. Okay, they're kind of like pacing the hallway, and they find me. As I said, okay. So I went back downstairs after being found out hiding upstairs, and I joined the others, and these couple of guys confirmed basically what I feared, which was there was something going on here. They calmly but really excitedly announced that we were going to play together. We're all going to play this game. They said, we're going to play this sort of, it's like hide and seek, but it'd be a good idea if probably you guys now go off and find some weapons. Not the kind of thing you want to hear, okay? To go and find some weapons. It was basically allowed for people to defend themselves, okay? So it's like they wanted to be a good sport, you know, they wanted to be a good sport. They wanted to be something on the line for them as well. And so they allowed us to go get some weapons. Okay, so it was allowed for us to defend ourselves, as those, because they said, because of those that are going to get caught, they're going to get killed. So it was like, right, okay, this got a bit what's the word, scary pretty quick, and we all we all basically just ran off to hide, and they were obviously going to count a certain amount of time, and then they would come find us. So everybody runs off in different directions, and I went straight back to the room where I'd just been. Which, if you think about it, bad plan, because they just found me there. So why would I really go back there? But the reason I go back there is because I know that I've got these 10 pegs there. Okay, so I run off. I run in and where I hid these 10 pegs, and I then run. I get the weapons basically, which I'm going to use as a weapon. I mean, they're not the best of weapons, are they? But I suppose they've got a stabbing sort of aspect that I can use them for. But I just knew I had something I could get very, very quickly. I knew where it was. I mean, obviously everybody's going to run off to the kitchen to get knives and stuff like that. But if everybody else is going there, I'm going to go somewhere else, because that's obviously what they're going to be thinking as well. First place we're going to go is the kitchen, because that's where everyone's going to be. So I'm trying to think outside the box. So as I said, I ran off and I decided to go to the garage area, which is there's like a side gate or something around the side, and there's a garage, and there's somebody standing there who's one of the, let's say, one of the many staff they have on hand, I guess, at this place. Now, not that I won't mention who he is, but the person who was standing there was actually one of the senior members of my church was standing there. So a man of God is standing there, okay, and he lets me in to this kind of garden area. I say garden, it's as I said, it's a garage bit, but it's got loads of gardening equipment in there. You know, it's got like the hedge trimmers, and you think about it, gardening equipment. I mean, that's the first place you should go. That's even better, really. Depending on what you've got. I mean, if you think about it, if you've got a battery-powered hedge trimmer that's just going, it's like a chainsaw or something. I mean, you'd want that surely over a knife. But anyway, so I'm the only person who's gone there, and as I said, I'm looking at all this garden equipment, and I'm thinking to myself, I've got shears. You know, I can use them as a weapon. There's loads of things in here I can use, and shears is what I'm thinking of. But bizarrely, very bizarrely, and this will make sense, I decided to pick up a hammer. Okay, but again, I don't know the reason why, but the hammer I decided to get was what I call a glass hammer. So a glass hammer, I've got one in my car. It's basically if something happened and I was crushed and I was in my car, or like, you know, you fall off a bridge and you're in water, then I've got a hammer I can get out of my glove box, which is just like it's plastic hammer, and it's got pointed metal bits. So if you imagine like a V shape to this hammer, and it's to smash glass, you know, in a case of emergency. Okay, for some reason I wanted this glass hammer, and again, why that would be in a garden sort of equipment area doesn't really make a great deal of sense. But that's why I decided to go and take. And I was planning to use this basically to sort of deflect or kind of clash against anything coming in. You know, let's say someone's swinging something, then I can put the hammer out, and that will kind of like brace that, and then I can use something else with my other hand to almost like with somebody with two swords. You know, that they've got one that will block something, and then they can use the other sword to attack the person. It was like that. I was planning to use it, and because it was a hammer, I thought if there's something in somebody's hand, because of it's got the flat part of the hammer, if I got something in that, I can kind of like disarm somebody with it as well. So I thought it was quite handy from that point of view. I'm thinking it through. Okay, so that's what I decided to go with. Although, as I said, I would have gone with a hedge trimmer if I really thought about it. Very aggressive way to go, but there you go. The way I would think of it is not many people are going to be brave enough to take me on if I've got a hedge trimmer, like a chainsaw. Like, we'll go after somebody else, you know. So I didn't make myself a kind of a scary target, I guess. Really, where I should have done. Anyway, So as I said, I plan to use the hammer to intercept blows, and use as a weapon, obviously defensively, as well as an offensive weapon. Somewhere in the house, I ended up bumping into one of those that was doing the hunting. Okay, who swung at me, and as planned, I used the hammer just to block this weapon, and I took him out. So I didn't see how I ended up killing this guy, but I did. Again, I've got these 10 pegs, but I didn't see the 10 pegs actually in use. I don't remember seeing that, unless I've just not seen the fact that I've used them maybe as a stabbing weapon. I don't know. Basically, in the course of this evening, I ended up taking out 2 or 3 of them. So more or less, I took out me on my own, took out all the guys really that were attacking people. Although it did feel like it was a free for all anyway. Um, so I did think it was a bit of a free for all anyway, because the 2 guys who were the organisers, as I said, I took out 3 people, and there was 2 guys which were the organisers. So, and some of the organisers actually did survive it because they put an end to the game. So the ones that were, yeah, there you go. So the guys that were organising it were not expecting the kind of resistance that came back, because they were prepared and we weren't prepared, but I was, because I went and I got some weapons. So I think what happened was it was like a ready or not, here I come kind of thing. But it was, they went after them pretty quick, so they didn't give them really much time. So some of them probably weren't even armed, and so they were kind of thinking this is gonna be easy. We're gonna pick these off, no problem. But they didn't. They didn't. They underestimated me. uh, anyway, um, it did. Yeah, so basically, it didn't go down to the last man. So they decided to give up, because a few were dead. You know, there's quite a few that were injured at that point. They'd participated. You know, they'd participated in this thing. So then these T-shirts were basically being given out. I was like, you made it. You got it through. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah, bit like a gift shop, isn't it? You know, you come off a roller coaster, you survived. You know, put the name of the roller coaster in. Is that kind of thing, and then you wander around, you know, the theme park with your T-shirt on. Look, I did this ride, you know, or you show your friends. It's that kind of thing. That kind of thing. Anyway, so what came to mind? Nothing actually came to mind really, other than it being what it was. And then as I wrote it out, things started to come into my mind and I started to think of things. Okay, now I'm going to cite here some Old Testament scripture. Okay, so what it reminded me of was Judges 4 and 5. Okay, so that's their they're decent sections really, of the Bible, and this tells the Old Testament account that involves tent pegs and hammers. So I've got tent pegs and a hammer. Okay, so that's where I'm making the connection. Whether I'm making a connection that isn't really there, I'm not sure. But as soon as I was thinking, but where does tent pegs come from? It's so random, so random. But a lot of my dreams are actually to do with making the Bible come alive or telling a story in a different way. Okay, so this is sort of what I felt like this was. I felt like this was, maybe talking about that. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to sort of summarize this, but definitely read Judges 4 and 5 because it is really interesting. So so it involves, yeah, because as I said, my work thing it I'm using tent pegs as a essentially to kill people in this, in self-defense. Obviously I'm not the person who started this, they started this. I'm defending myself, but I'm going to have to use it as a weapon to take somebody out. Okay, so and this particular story involves a tent peg being used as a murder weapon. Okay, where you've got this person called Jael. So Jael is the wife of Heber, and she drives a tent peg into the head of a Canaanite general called Sisera. Well, basically what happens is the Sisera is the general of this army, who's just been. Sorry, I'm going off topic. Well, I'm not going off topic. I'm explaining it, but outside of here. But Sisera is the general of the Canaanite army, and the Israel, you know, the children of Israel and all the tribes. They basically they've won that battle, and Sisera is fleeing the battle. Okay, so that's basically what's happening. And what happens is this woman Jael, she hides the general from his enemies, from his enemy. So he comes up to her tent and basically says, you know, like, hide me in your tent. And so she shows him hospitality. And I think it says something like she gives him some milk. You know, he lies down to have a sleep, and she puts, you know, like a nice fur blanket kind of thing over him, make sure he's not, and then he goes to sleep. So she shows him hospitality, but while he is sleeping, she actually, you know, kneels over him with a tent peg and drives a tent peg through the side of his temple, so straight through his head, and kills him. Okay, and his death leads to actually the defeat of King Jabin, who I imagine is the actual, I don't know, is that Canaanite king? I guess something like that, and ends the oppression of Israel. Okay, the main parts are that discuss this sort of part are actually Judges 4:17 to 24. So both, and it involves obviously her hammering a tent peg into his head, sort of like this dream. Maybe, as I said, maybe I'd need to look into the meaning of this dream a bit more. So this is just because again, when I'm looking into scripture, I'm looking into, okay, so who's General Sisera in this? Who's offering hospitality? Well, that's kind of what happens, isn't it? They're offering, well, no, it's not, is it? It's the opposite. Now I think about it, because they're the ones that are offering, the two organisers are the ones who are offering hospitality, and that we're over for dinner and stuff like that. But it's almost like the opposite. So they're the ones offering hospitality, so they would be the ones driving the tent pegs. That said, I suppose she was the aggressor in this. He was coming to the tent and not being aggressive, but looking for sanctuary. So I suppose it does kind of work. But again, that's just, as I said, that may just be me grasping at straws as to what this actually means. But if not, I've just opened up some scripture for you. So Judges 4-5, check it out. It's interesting. Hopefully you found this dream interesting. There's not really any more thoughts, to be honest. I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? As I said, other than me mentioning the potential there with scripture, there's not really much more I can get from that, other than it's an interesting dream. Potentially, it's got biblical a context to it. Maybe not, but how many people, if you were to run a survey of 100 people, how many people are going to say tent pegs as a weapon? Very, very few. Very, 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 very few. You might have somebody who says a hammer, but I think if you surveyed 1,000 people, not a single one of them is going to say tent pegs. So the fact that it had tent pegs in there makes me think that it was pointing me towards this, Judges 4 and 5. So read it. If anybody's got any comments or any other thoughts around it, as I said, I know that this sort of dream exists in the form of a couple of different films. In to a certain extent, I understand that, as I said, but I hadn't seen any of these films anywhere near when this dream happened. Nothing to actually spark it up, you know. But yeah, interesting dream. So that's it for now. Hopefully you found that interesting, as I said. And I will be on to the next one. On to the next one. All right. See you soon.